everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in the Bank and Brews. This is our last virtual Bank and Brews for 2020 pandemic edition. We really appreciate y'all taking the time to join us today as we delve into marketing in the digital age. And our guest today is Gordon Law from Swimming Duck. And he's got a slide in his deck to introduce himself, so I'll let him give you all the particulars on his background. So with that being said, Gordon, please get started. Thank you.
Thanks, Libby. So good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining. I did just want to, I always feel like when somebody says, let me tell you a little bit about me, people kind of immediately want to recoil into the fetal position. So I'm just going to take just half a second to kind of tell you who I am and why I'm so delighted to be here today. I do have this agency in Dallas called Swimming Duck. We're a small to classified as a small to mid-sized agency. We work primarily with small to mid-sized clients, and we've been blessed to have a relationship with Extraco since I guess it was late summer of last year, and we just love that relationship. In addition to running Swimming Duck, I also teach at SMU, and I've been there since 2011. Teaching mostly media and digital media and a couple other things as well. I've been in the business for about 40 years or so. And in the event anyone wants to reach out to me, afterward, I've got my contact information on that slide. That's my cell number, and there's my email address. So feel free to reach out if you have any follow-up questions or anything that we can do for you. The three main things we want to talk about today are just kind of go over some fundamentals about what marketing of the digital age, really is, and in some things what it isn't. And maybe it's a little bit of a preface. I can tell you something I believe in as much as anything else, that marketing of the digital age doesn't necessarily mean digital marketing. It does mean that we have to understand how consumers use digital to make their decisions about what they're going to buy, however. And we'll go into more detail on that a little bit later. And then after we go through some fundamentals, I want to give you all some thought starters about how you can get started maybe approaching digital on your own. And then if you find that you want to get some help working with the folks at Extraco, we've also identified some resources for you in the Waco, Temple, Bryan, College Station area that they can be of service to you as well. But first, before we get started, I want to take a little quiz. And what I'm going to have you do, I'm going to give you the two questions. There's actually one question, there's two choices. And just using the chat feature that you have on Zoom, just answer either A or B, and then Christina will tally those results, and we'll give you what the results are here in a second. So here's the question. The question is, would you rather give up the use of your smartphone for the rest of your life? Now, you can still have the phone. You can have a phone that takes calls, receives calls, you can do text, but you can't have a smartphone. So you can't access the internet, can't access social, or any of that stuff. Would you rather give up the use of your smartphone for the rest of your life, or would you be willing to have one of your little fingers amputated? A or B? So just go on chat, type in A or B, and send it in, and Christina will tally the results. Now, unless you think I'm a nutcase for asking something, a question like this, I can tell you that this is literally an actual study that was done. I forget the guy's name now, but he owned a native advertising company. This guy coined a concept called the intimacy principle. And the intimacy principle states that the more intimate relationship that a person has with their device, the more important it is for the marketing and the advertising messaging to be integrated into the content in which they were viewing. Now, that's a little self-serving for a guy that owns a native advertising company. But his premise was, in going into this study, he felt like that, his assumption was that people had a more intimate relationship with their phones than anything else. So we wanted to prove that out. And so we literally did this study among 750 adults. Now, in fairness, the adults were between the ages of 18 to 34. And so they were, a little bit younger. But I can tell you, since I first learned of this study about 2 years ago, I've given this same quiz to people of all ages, all backgrounds, and the results that have come out of those are almost identical to the results in the study that he conducted among 750 people. So
Gordon, people wrote back that and this is a no judgment zone, y'all, don't.
All good.
But they would go with the amputated finger.
Really? So the majority did, right?
Yes.
That's very interesting. And by the way, That's not inconsistent at all. So here's what it is. 49% of all respondents said they would amputate, but 59% of all iPhone users said they would amputate. So think about that for a minute. If it was a 50-50 split between, say, Android and iPhone users, that meant that 39% of say, Samsung and Android users would be willing to give up give up a little finger, with 59% to average out to 49%. I don't know what the actual sample was, but in general, 50% of all people said they would. 6 out of 10 of iPhone users said they would. Maybe I should have also asked you guys to, if you don't mind, maybe go ahead and send another chat. Let us know whether or not you have an iPhone or an Android. And Christine, when you get those results, if you let me know. But that's not a surprise at all. And I find that kind of shocking. I did find it funny that we were talking earlier when you think, can they see me, Christina? So I have to use my little finger to hold my phone up. So for me, I mean, the idea of getting my little finger seems kind of silly anyway. But you're right, this is a no judgment zone. I could personally give up my smartphone easily, but a lot of people can't. But I think what it really proves is, it proves a couple of things. One is how important mobile is in marketing. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well. But I think it also proves is that we are absolute smack dab in the middle of the digital age. And as marketers, as people who own businesses, people who run businesses, we have to be aware of that when we're trying to communicate with people and to get them engaged with our brand, and ideally, to buy from us. So I'm going to go through a couple of other things to try to prove that point out a little bit more. This infographic is something that was put together by eMarketer. If you guys don't subscribe to eMarketer, I would encourage you to do so. They're a great resource. Mainly they're a research aggregator. They also do a lot of research on their own as well. And it's a way to sort of stay in touch with the way people use digital, technology. And the two things that I thought were important on this slide were, first of all, in 2019, because they haven't done the 2020 study yet, but in 2019, the average US adult spent about 6.5 hours a day on their digital devices. Now that's a combination of mobile, of tablet, and of laptop as well. Compare that to television, which is held steady at about 3.5 hours a day for as long as I can remember. So digital among those three platforms combined are in excess of what people spend on television. Now, the important thing is, prior to 2019, no single digital device had more usage per day than television did. However, in 2019, as you can see from the very bottom down there, mobile device usage actually eclipsed television viewing for the first time, which I think speaks even more to the fact that, hey, this digital thing really is a thing, and that you literally can't ignore mobile if we're going to be marketing using digital technology to market. The next thing I want to show you is it's just sort of this massive infographic, and it breaks down, and it started off early this year, what happens every digital minute of every day. And there's a lot of information there, but some of the ones I thought were most interesting were that, every minute there's 500 hours of videos that are uploaded on YouTube. There's $1 million in e-commerce that is done every minute of every day. There's 69,000 plus job applications that are submitted on LinkedIn, and about 147,000 photos are uploaded on Facebook. I believe you guys are going to have access to this information later, so you may want to go back and take a look at this a little bit more. But there's and this isn't everything, but this is a whole lot that it's going on, during the 6.5 hours that the average U.S. adult are online every day. Something else really remarkable happened in 2019 as well, that for the first time, the amount of money that was spent on digital advertising exceeded that of traditional advertising in the United States. $129.3 billion was spent last year in digital advertising, which is about 54% of the total spend. Most notably, though, is that of that $129 billion, 66% of it, or roughly 2/3 of it, was spent in digital. So again, I think reinforced the fact that, that there's a lot of money that's being spent in digital media and digital advertising, and the majority of that is going to mobile. Okay, so that's kind of the break-off point between, trying to maybe prove out, why digital is so important. What I'd like to do now is kind of get into some other things that we talk about when we think about digital marketing. To the extent that you all want to try to do this yourself or you want to reach out to an outside resource, I think it's sort of some helpful tenets for you to be aware of. And the first thing is this whole idea of paid, owned, and earned. It is absolutely, crucial to understanding what's going on in how consumers use digital to go through their own sort of, journey as they're going through the process of making a purchase decision. And the first thing I'd like to show you is this graphic. It's a little bit dated, but not terribly so. Give them examples of what paid, owned, and earned are. So in paid, it's literally any place you can go make a paid ad. Everything from traditional television, billboards and magazines and radio, cinema, direct mail, anything that's like, paid, including anything you can buy online. So search and digital and video and all of those sort of online purchases. Owned is everything from brick and mortar. If you own a brick and mortar location and people walk into your store, that's a crucially important owned platform. But also anything that you have online, your website, your blog, your social media platforms. These are also very, very important pieces of real estate for you as a business owner to think about, where customers and potential customers can engage with you and engage with your brand. And then earned in the old days, before digital, it was word of mouth. That's when, that was always been the most valuable and frankly, the most affordable, because it's free, form of marketing and advertising we can get when people talk about you. Well, now people talk about you online. They can say good things about you. They can be, advocates for your brand, or they can be detractors for your brand. If they're talking, if they're saying bad things about you, if they had a bad experience with you. So it's important to understand how these three things work. The most important, I think, in concept I can get you, I want to leave with you though, is this. I'm going to give you this a little bit more detail. The role of paid advertising is to get people to go into an owned environment. Once people are in that owned environment, they can spend time with the brand. They can learn more about you. They can engage with you. They can have a conversation with you. And then ideally they buy from you, they have a good experience, and then they go out and they say good things about you, ideally online. And then when people see what they're posting and what they're saying about you as a brand, then they're going to go to your own inventory, which means we've got paid media designed to drive people into your own, and earned impressions drive people into your own. And that's what we try to get, to activate people to go into your own real estate and to spend time with you, to fall in love with you, and ideally to buy from you. So let's explore those concepts a little bit deeper. So in the pre-digital age, paid advertising was the resource that we used, along with public relations. But paid advertising what we use to get people to create brand awareness, brand preference, brand intent, and brand purchase, which frankly, that's a heck of a lot to ask, from an ad. But in the digital age, however, it's changed a little bit. Paid ads now are meant to inspire someone to take an action. And that action, more often than not, if you're not like ShamWow, for example, or somebody, you see it and you're supposed to just go buy the product right then and there. But it's outside of pure direct response advertising. We want people to go to an own space where they can engage with the brand and they can spend time with you. You can have conversation with you and ultimately take an action, which generally speaking is going to be to make a purchase. Once they're loyal to the brand, once they've bought from you, and ideally are in a repeat purchase cycle, then we want them to use word of mouth and social to create those earned media impressions we talked about and drive more people into our own real estate. This little infographic kind of a different way to look at it. So we want to inspire people, we want to activate them, and we want to amplify their engagement with us to get more people to come back into our own world. So it kind of becomes a bit of a cycle. But that's sort of the basics of what paid, owned, and earned do, and why it's important for us to understand all three of those things. I want to give you a little different context in how we can use paid, owned, and earned, and how people that plan media in the digital world think about paid, owned, and earned. But it's also the kind of thing that those of you who don't make your living every day in the advertising world can also think about these three platforms and how you can use it to make advertising decisions. So I want to introduce you to this concept called the purchase process, or the path to purchase, or the consumer journey. There's all different ways to that this has been titled, and to think about it. I'm going to give you one model, but it's just the model that we use more often than not. You can certainly use whatever makes the most sense for you and for your business. There's a couple of ways that we do it. First of all, we want to think about what is the consumer thinking as they go through the process. And here's something I would contend. It doesn't matter if somebody's going to buy a stick of gum, or they're going to buy a house or a car, or they're going to make a decision about where they're going to dinner or what bank they're going to work with. People go through this process. In some cases, it's a short process. In other cases, it takes a long time. It's laid out in a linear fashion, but people don't go through it in a linear format. We'll talk about that in just a second. But everybody goes through it. And so that's why it's important to think about it for your own business, and how do people become aware of what it is that I do, and ultimately try to, hopefully they will buy from us. So the first thing we have to do is understand what people are thinking as they go through the process. Then we figure out, once we know what they're thinking, what role does paid advertising, what role does our own platforms have, and what role does earned media or earned impressions have in terms of nudging people along their own respective path to purchase. It can also be very important to understand how long it takes people to move from stage to stage, and then ultimately throughout the process, in general. So here's the model that we use. As you see across the top, there's 5 sort of key steps in the process. There's awareness, there's consideration, there's trial purchase, there's loyalty, and then there's evangelism or advocacy. Now, before I get into this a little bit more, the thing, a proof point, or something I want to make sure you understand. Talk about awareness. We're not, at this point, we're not talking about awareness of your product. We're talking about awareness of people, that they become aware that they need something. Something's happened in their life. It can be as simple as I'm hungry, or it can be something, like I've got to have, my water main at my house just burst, and I've got water, going. I've got to call a plumber. It can literally be anything. But in this process, awareness means awareness of the need of a product or service that your company, your brand is able to take care of and able to service. And so you see that very first row at the top, need state. When we're working through this process with our clients, and I would encourage you to think through this in your own, for your own business, or if you work with an outside marketing resource. And we're going to give you some suggestions of people you can work with at the end of this presentation. I would encourage you to think first and foremost about, what are people thinking? What are people feeling? What's going on in their brains as they're moving from awareness into consideration? Consideration is, okay, I've got a need. What steps am I going to take? Where am I going to look in order to find somebody who can help solve my problem? Then you move into trial purchase. Okay, I've considered, I've vetted my options out. What's going to make me decide who to buy from, who to purchase from? And then once I bought from them, did I have a good experience? Am I going to be willing, to purchase them again? And how often? If it's something like buying a meal, I mean, you could go repurchase a meal from somebody tomorrow or next week. If you bought a new house or a new car, then you're likely not going to buy, again, for some time. But still, you've had a good experience, and you're loyal to the brand. And then ultimately, what kind of experience much you have had with that brand, so you're going to become an evangelist. You're going to become a disciple. You're going to be willing to go out and say really good things about that particular experience with people that you know, and to advocate on behalf of the company you had a good experience with. So I would encourage you, if you go through this process, lay out the need states first, because once you have the need states laid out, then you can figure out, okay, what paid platforms can I use throughout the process? When are people going to go into my own inventory, my own real estate, and what experience do I want them to have? And then where can earn come into play? This is really important. And I promise you, I don't care what business or service that you are in, to understand this particular, this process is going to help you make marketing decisions, down the road. Okay. So since we're in, is there any questions, by the way, you want to share, or any questions coming through on chat, by the way, Christina, that I might be able to address now?
No questions yet, but just a reminder for everyone to use the chat feature. And I will definitely stop you, Gordon, when a question comes through. So.
Okay, good, great. Thank you so much. So I want to share something with you that I'm sure everyone here has heard from their parents at some point in time. Since our company is called Swimming Duck, I can't do a presentation without at least having some duck component in it. But here's the thing, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. I've lost count of the number of times I heard that from my parents, and if you ask either of my 2 children, I'm sure they would say they've probably heard the same thing until, you know, they're sick. But hopefully it'll stick with them in the same way that it stuck with me. Why is that relevant to today's conversation? Here's why. Just because you can do paid digital media doesn't necessarily mean that you should. Now, going back to something I said early on, marketing of the digital age doesn't necessarily mean digital marketing, but it does mean we have to understand how people use digital platforms to move through that path to purchase that we just went through. That being said, I can't remember the last time that we worked with a client on some sort of a paid media strategy that didn't involve some form of digital. You almost have to do it. You almost can't ignore it. But the reality of it is there are a lot of different ways you can use digital media. So for the balance of our discussion today, what I really want to do is kind of walk you through maybe a consideration set. So if you've gone through your path to purchase model, you do realize you want to embark on a paid media strategy, you want to embark on a paid digital media strategy. I'm going to give you some things to think about in terms of sort of a hierarchy of what you need to do first before you do the next thing, before you do the next thing. Because I think that'll be helpful in terms of how you think through all your many options. Because one thing about digital, there are more options out there for you to communicate with consumers digitally than any other type of advertising that I'm aware of. So in the next couple of slides, I'm going to introduce you to this thing called a digital media pyramid. I didn't create it. I didn't introduce it. There's a company called the Goodway Group, which is a leading digital media company. They're the ones who sort of coined this particular model. But I've worked with him over time, and the guy who's the CEO is a good friend of mine. So I know he doesn't mind me using it as long as I credit them for creating it. So here's what the digital media pyramid looks like. You see, there's 4 stages to it, and they've all identified as having sort of different characteristics. I would spend a lot of time on this slide because the next 4 slides I've broken out a bit more detail about the things you need to be thinking about as you move through this. But I would encourage you, though, to maybe think back in your mind Maslow's hierarchy of need. We all learned that in high school, right? And the basic premise of what Maslow came up with is that before a human being can advance in life, there are just certain basic needs they have to take care of, first. It's very sort of foundational. And in some ways, think about that when you think about this. There are certain things you just frankly should do before you move on to more advanced stages. So let's get started on this thing. So on the base, and the base really relates back to the things that we own. In the paid, own, and earn world, before you start thinking about paid or earned, you really need to think about own. So one of the first things I encourage clients, anybody who's got a physical location, a brick and mortar location, or maybe it's a truck, or maybe it's a pop-up, but it's a place that people can physically go to, you really need to make sure you can manage your online profiles and all those associated ratings that come with that. So it's things like Yelp, it's things like Foursquare, and there's a bunch of them out there. There's hundreds of online directories that people go to get information about places they can buy products and services from. I'm going to give you a tool later if you want to try to do this yourself. And it doesn't go without complication and time. But if you want to try to do it yourself, I'm going to give you the name of a tool that you can use, for this. But you can certainly also go to outside resources to help you with this as well. But it's really important because this is where people go, to get information about where they can buy from. And much like with paid search and with Google, it's important to make sure that your content is current and that your profile is optimized to these different platforms. Otherwise, you're not going to show up as well as your competition is. The other thing is that this is a great opportunity because people also reply and they respond, to feedback they have about the experience they have with brands. And so the ability to see what people are saying about you in these various platforms is a great opportunity for you to have a conversation with them and to reply to feedback, both positive and most certainly, the negative ones. So if you're not already doing this right now, I would encourage you, this will be one of the very first things that you do, is make sure that your company's profiles are current, they're up to date, and they are absolutely optimized given the different ways that these directories give you to optimize your listings on their sites. So the next thing is we move to level 2. We're still in own. So look, we've already, the first 2 levels of this thing are all about own. We're not even spending money yet, which is a good thing. So the next phase is look at your destination sites, right? place where people want to go. And that's going to be mainly your websites, your social media pages, your blogs, maybe some others. Those are the only three I can really, think of. The beauty of it is, I mean, in the same way if you have a brick and mortar store, think about what you do. I mean, you open your store every day, and you get ready for people to walk in the door and for people to come have a good experience there. You think about your website and your social media page and your blog in that same way. People are going to come to there, and you want them to have a good experience. You want them to be able to find what they're looking for when they come there. Because we have the opportunity to drive virtually an unlimited number of people to come in there. And they have an opportunity for them to not only experience why they're there, but also to share comments with you. Here's something else that's a trend that we're noticing, certainly in the last year or so. Brands in their advertising, rather than so if you click on like an ad, right, whether it's search or it is a display ad or a video ad, there's a trend towards brands not taking people to their websites, but taking people to social media pages, which may seem a little odd when you think about it. People are more inclined to engage with a brand and with other people in a social media world than they are on a website. And I think that's the main reason why we're seeing more of a trend for advertisers to drive people, not to their website, but their social media pages, off of their paid advertising, because there's an opportunity for the user to spend a bit more time and to get more engaged with the brand in that particular setting. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying it's something you may want to consider.
Gordon, we have a great question that came in from one of the attendees, and she's a healthcare provider. And so the whole Yelp,
sure,
use of Yelp makes her a little nervous just because of confidentiality and HIPAA and all those things. So you can only respond so much when people have a negative review.
Sure.
So her question is it better to not have a Yelp or business profile at all? And maybe what are some other kind of digital platforms that she could use?
So it's a really good question, by the way. So here, I'm going to answer that in a couple of different ways and make sure I'm going to give you a general answer, and then I'm going to try to address it maybe more healthcare specific. Here's the way I would generally answer that question. One advantage to being on all these various directories is that you have eyesight into where consumers are going. You're able to see where people are going. The reality of it is, it doesn't matter what business people are going to talk about you somewhere online, and hopefully they're going to say good things about you, but they may not as well. I've seen different studies that show that people are 8 times more likely to share something negative than they are to share something positive. So one advantage to going ahead, and whether you're able to use it as a healthcare provider, whether you're able to use it as robustly as somebody maybe more of a retail environment or not, at least having your company's profile built out on those pages gives you the opportunity to see if people actually are engaging with your business and with your brand, if they're saying things about you in those platforms, which you wouldn't have if you didn't already have a presence in those particular platforms. So in some way, it's more maybe as much of a defense mechanism as it is an offense strategy. Now, in terms of healthcare specific, I'd be lying to you if I knew that among the hundreds or so of directories that are out there that are available, I don't know right off the top of my head if there's any that are perhaps better for healthcare professionals or not. But here's what I would say is I'm more than happy to have our team go in and do some digging on that. So if whoever it is that asked that question would like to email me or call me later and would like some very specific direction on that, I'm more than happy to have us take a look at it and see if there are some that maybe make a bit more sense for there's healthcare is the only one obviously has HIPAA restrictions, but there's other companies as well that simply can't share some information because it's confidential. Maybe not quite to the extent as what HIPAA requires healthcare professionals to be, but I'm more than happy to do some additional research for you later that may be very specific, just whatever your industry is.
And Aaron, I just chatted you Gordon's email address, so y'all can follow up after.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Good question, Aaron. Thank you so much. Okay, Then finally in level 3 is when we finally get into paid. And here's what my recommendation would be, that when you get into paid, that more often than not, doing paid search engine, which is the same thing as search engine marketing, and then retargeting off of paid search is probably the most important thing that you can do for a couple of reasons. The biggest one is, generally speaking, we go back to our path to purchase model we looked at. Generally speaking, you can think about this in your own experience. When you have a need for something, a product or a service, unless you already know exactly who you're going to reach out to because of a previous experience, most people are going to go to search to vet out their options. And that's why it's really important to have some kind of a presence in search world. Now, I'm going to talk in a minute the difference between paid search, which is SEM, search engine marketing, and SEO, which stands for search engine optimization. But being on Google, either organically, which I'll talk about in a minute, or through a paid search, can be really important to making sure that people find you when they're actively seeking out solutions to their problems or their solutions early in their purchase process. Because if you're not there, your competition is probably going to be there. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit more here in a second. But first of all, I want to finish out this concept of the pyramid. That's level 4. So once you've kind of gone through those first 3 things, then you can begin to look at maybe other options. And by the way, I kind of left out too, I should have said on paid, I also think paid social, and I'm talking about that in a minute as well. Paid social can also be very effective for you. In addition to paid, in part because there's no minimums, it can be very affordable. And it also tends to be kind of, people see it when they're in that early stage of the purchase process. But then once you get to paid to level 4, once you've done the first 3 things, then certainly you can look at doing things like display, which is banner advertising, video, paid social here if you haven't done it in level 3, and then more esoteric form. You may have heard things like, programmatic or native advertising, or certainly more complicated, types of digital advertising. But the main things I want you to think about, we go through this pyramid and kind of summarize it. First and foremost, please pay attention to your own platforms, your website, your social platforms, your blog, and all those directories where people can find you. If you can, perform an SEO audit of your website. And if you don't know how to do that, I'm happy to show you how to do that and turn you into a resource who can do that for you. Manage those online profiles. Yext is I said earlier, there's a tool that I can make you aware of. Yext is a great tool. It's the one that we use. There's the link you can go to it. If you don't want to try to manage it yourself, we're happy to help you with it. Most importantly, through all of those things above, through your own platforms, it gives you great opportunity to engage with your consumers, because they want to be engaged with. They're going to be coming to your own platform. To not be paying attention, not be listening when they're there, you're missing a great opportunity. So that's the first thing. You can do those things, you're going to be well on your way. After that, then you can look at things like in social media, both creating content, boosting those posts. This thing called boosted posts. It's a pay-to-play strategy that Facebook has, but it's really affordable, and there's no reason not to do it. And maybe even paid social. It can be very cost-effective ways to enhance your paid digital strategies. And then once you finish that, then you can kind of broaden out above and beyond that. But hopefully that'll kind of give you a way to get started. You want to do it yourself, or working maybe with an outside resource. And again, I want to give you some leads on that. Okay, so real quickly, because I know we're kind of coming to the end of our presentation, I'll talk a little bit about the difference between SEO and SEM. SEO is search engine optimization, and it's the way that people get to your website without paying them to get there. So anytime you have been on when you go to search anything on Google or Yahoo or Bing or whatever, at the very top are always going to be the paid listings. That's the search engine marketing. That's the pay-per-click stuff. It's the listings below that they are there based upon the way those search engines, how relevant they deem the content on the websites to be relative to the search. Now, that second point about Google's always been about the user experience, and that really is true. That and making a whole lot of money. But because Google's always been about the user experience, content relevance is absolutely the driving factor in how Google ranks your site. So if you're going to show up on page 1 or even page 2 And sometimes people don't go to page 2. Anything beyond page 2 is death. You might as well not be there. But from an organic ranking standpoint, you want to try to be on page 1 or page 2. If you're not in the paid search strategy, you want to have your site indexed by Google so that they consider the relevancy of that search term. So you're going to show up. It's a really important thing to do. I do a lot of words in there, and it's not the easiest thing to do, but it's important to do. SEO is crucially important to being found on the internet. SEM, which is search engine marketing, that's the paid listing. That's the paid search stuff. It's a way to buy ads so that people find you, even if your SEO isn't working quite so well. But I will say this, though, that paid search is not an excuse to avoid doing SEO. And the reason why, without going into all the details on it, is because that relevancy concept we talked about here, relevancy and how Google rates your website based upon relevancy of content has an awful lot to do with how much you pay and how high you rank in paid search. You can't just give Google all the money in the world and buy your way around a website that they don't deem to be relevant to a search. So focus on SEO. It goes back to the search, goes back to the digital pyramid. Focus on your SEO, and then you can really start capitalizing on everything else we've talked about. Okay, so how to get started. Here's what I'm gonna encourage you to do. You gotta start, where are you now? Where's your business coming from, and who's buying from your competitors? And then where do you wanna go? So I can't really give you this presentation to get into the where do you wanna go, but I can give you some tools about where are you now and how can you figure out where your business is coming from that you may or may not have thought of. 3 things I want to talk to you about. One is this thing called a BDI analysis. It sounds complicated. It really isn't. A target analysis than an in-store survey. Here's what a BDI analysis is. All it really is looking at percentage of sales by geography. You can do it on a zip code level divided by the percent of your population by geography. And here's how you do that. I've identified 5 fictional zip codes, right? All you do is, and you can track it. If you're not tracking it just naturally, you can do it through credit card sales. There's different ways to go about getting this. But you literally go in and look at over a year or 2 years or 3 years, or however long you want to do it. You go in and you plot like an Excel spreadsheet what your total sales are by zip code. And then you total those up at the bottom. And then you go back in and use the cool little Excel formula. Like, okay, what percentage of my sales are by each zip code? So in this case, zip code 11111 did $10,000 out of total sales of $82,000. That's 12.2% of their total sales. Zip code 222 is 14.6% and all the way on down. Easy to do. And then you go in and you plot population by zip code. There's a number of online sources that can give you zip code or population by zip code. It's easily available information. We can help you find that. Whatever outside resource you work with help you find that. Then you do the same thing. You take all the zip codes you do business in, you plot the populations, you total it up, you go calculate what your percent of population is by zip code. Then the way you calculate BDI is you literally, you divide percent of sales by percent of population. So in this case, you're dividing 12.2% by 15.6%, that's 0.78, right? What does that mean? That means that you're getting 12.2% of your sales out of 15.6% of your population. If you were getting 15.6% of your sales out of a zip that had 15.6% of your population, that number, BDI, would be a 1.00, because you're getting kind of what population said that you should. Why is this important? Because what you want to look for are 2 things. First thing, you want to look for BDIs that are lower than a 100, because that tells you you're not getting your fair share. Now, there may be a compelling reason for it. That zip code may be on the outskirts of your trading area. There may be a river or a bridge, or there may be construction or something that's prohibiting people in that zip code from getting to you. So this isn't a panacea. It's not always the exact, oh, I got to go put all my money into that zip code. They can sure be a good way to help you understand where you're not getting as much business from as population would suggest that you should. Conversely, if you look at that 130, that says you're getting 30% more business out of that zip code than the population said that you should. So in one way, a BDI analysis can tell you where you're not getting business and maybe you ought to put more effort. It can also tell you where maybe, you know what, maybe I don't need to put as much marketing effort because I'm already getting more business than what the zip code said I should be getting anyway, what the population says I should be getting. That's why BDI analysis can really help you identify where you can maybe target your dollars as opposed to just spreading it sort of uniformly across your entire, like a 5-mile area around your brick and mortar location. This really works for brick and mortar. It doesn't work, you know, quite so well for, it can work for e-com. It just doesn't tend to work, you know, quite as well. Okay, how are we on time, by the way, Christine?
Good, we have about 5 more minutes.
Cool, I can do that. So target analysis, I'm gonna throw a bunch of things up here that if you work with an outside, and you'd have to work with an outside resource, be able to, you know, tap into resources like MRI or Simmons and Scarborough Media Audit. There's a lot of secondary research sources out there that outside firms can help you get, can help you understand demographically who your target audience is, what sort of media they tend to use and how often they use it, get information on lifestyle and opinions and attitudes. It can help you identify a buyer persona profile. When we started working with Extraco about not quite a year and a half ago, they actually had gone through this process and they had 2 really well-developed personas for a couple of different target audiences they wanted, you know, to target. It could be really helpful, if only because then you're not just going after and trying to, you know, target a woman aged 25 to 54. You're targeting Maggie, who's age 52. And here's everything you know about Maggie. That's why doing a profile almost sounds like a silly exercise. But when you do that, then you're structuring your messaging and your media to go get Maggie or to go target Mark, not just a more, you know, homogenous, you know, group of people. It can be really helpful. Okay, there's one other thing I want to encourage you to do if you're a brick and mortar location. It is, I can't think of a single retail client we've worked with in the last 20 years we haven't recommended they do this. And everyone who's done it has been pleased with the results. It's an in-store survey. It takes about a minute to do. Here's what you do. You can either do this like on a card. You can have somebody do it on a tablet, however you want to do it. There's literally a few questions. What zip code did you come from immediately prior to coming here today? What were you doing immediately prior to coming here today? You give them options. So I was at work, I was shopping, I was at school, I was whatever it may be, right? What zip code will you be going to when you leave here today? And then what will you be doing when you leave here today? And you give them the same basic options. And then you can also ask what basic age and gender. So it can be male, female, check one of the 2, and maybe give them 4 different, you know, age, you know, items to check. Here's what's going to happen. If you'll do that for every customer who walks into your business for 1 week, you'll know truly what your geography of your business is. And you'll know what people are doing on either side of coming to you. And that's important because if you know where they're coming from and what they're doing afterwards, it can help you structure your message. If you know kind of what their lives are like before and after they engage with you, it can help you structure their messaging, your messaging to them. It can also help you make media decisions. And also, if you want to do any kind of local store marketing, if you want to partner with other brands that maybe have, you know, similar customers you're going after, you kind of know what these people are doing, so it can help you identify other people to co-brand with. It can also give you a broader idea of who your demographics are. They can help you hone in a bit more on who it is you want to try to talk to. This does not disrupt your operations. It doesn't disrupt your customer. It takes no time at all, and you can give them a little something or another, you know, as a thanks, you know, for doing this. Easy to do. Okay, so we've gone through a whole lot of information here. The reality is, we would love to be able to help you, but I didn't want this thing to be like a sales presentation at all. You know, we'd love to help if we can. If there's anything, if you have any just questions about anything that we talked about today, I'm more than happy to help you with that. But if you need some ongoing help, you really need the help of an agency, I mean, certainly we can help you, but I wanted to also make you aware of some resources that are in some combination of Waco and Belton and Temple and Ryan College Station. I kind of vetted these out or identified them with Extraco. Chibury Brand, Digital Cowgirl, 4 Columns, Open Path Digital, Sidekick Agency. There's others, but these are just 5 that you may want to take a look at, if only because they're there and they're in your neighborhood, and you know they're not an hour and a half up the road, you know, in Dallas. And again, I'm not trying to compete against myself or talk myself out of business. I just thought it's the right thing to do, is just to give you all some good resources in your own neighborhood that should you want to, rely on an outside resource to help you with any or all of this that we've talked about, today. So that's that. Somehow we did all that in 45 minutes. But thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to address them now. If you want to call me or text me, that number that I gave you early on was my cell. If you want to call, text, or email me, I'll be happy to address any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Gordon. And like he said, y'all can reach out to him directly, or you can reach out to ExtraCo and we can connect you to Gordon. We appreciate everybody logging in and learning all about digital marketing. Gordon, I am very impressed. You did that in the slotted time.
I know you are dubious I get that many slides and that fast, but it's okay.
Right.
I talk fast and nothing else.
And just a reminder, this recording will be on ExtraCo's website along with a blog recapping all of the highlights from Gordon's presentation and a link to the actual slide deck. So you can go back, and if you have questions or you want to remember exactly what he said, you can do that on our website. You can share it with your friends, coworkers, anybody else. This is a resource for y'all moving forward and taking what you learned today into practice. So again, thank you so much. As Libby said when she introduced Gordon, this is our last Bank and Brews for 2020. We look forward to hosting these again with new topics and new speakers in 2021. We'll be sure to send y'all information, and we hope y'all have a wonderful Thanksgiving and holiday season, and hopefully 2020 ends on a great note for each of you. So thank you so much, and thank you again, Gordon. We really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you all for letting me do this, Christine. I appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
Of course. Have a great day.